And as we get ready to end this half hour, we want to go to a live shot right now from John F. Kennedy International Airport. That is the Concorde, British Airways flight. Last commercial flight of that supersonic jet, taxiing out on the runway, supposed to be wheels up at 7:35, but as the British would say, they are ahead of schedule.
That's right, and it is the final flight, the end of an era. The Concorde has been around for many years. The Virgin flight was when, Matt?
1977, something like that?
I think it was 1976, but I'll double check on that. And some of the dignitaries on board: Joan Collins, Sir David Frost. We saw Christie Brinkley earlier.
Right. It's going to fly at 1,300 plus miles an hour. And here's a fact for you, Katie. The airframe actually stretches between 6 and 10 inches during flight because of the heating caused by the speed it travels at.
Wow, 3.5-hour flight, actually less than 3.5 hours before it reaches London, England.
That's right. And once they get there, they're expecting something like 250,000 people at Heathrow Airport to greet the plane as she arrives. Can we say she?
Yes, we decided we were trying to figure out the plane's gender. I thought it was male, you thought it was female, but it is in fact a female.
We're going to have much more on the Concorde's last flight, but first, this is Today on NBC.
Well, it was a rather emotional farewell. Captain Mike Bannister, who you met yesterday, gave a rather emotional speech. They then pushed back the plane and actually raised both the British and the American flags from the cockpit as it was pushed back. The New York City Fire Department, actually the Port Authority Fire Department, did a water display, a ceremonial farewell. You have to leave it to the British for the pomp and circumstance when they always celebrate a farewell, and this is indeed the passing of an era.
So what are they going to, you know, I've been to the Concorde terminal or reception area there at JFK. What are they going to do with that area now that the Concorde no longer flies out of it?
Well, officially they tell me they're going to convert it to more first-class lounge capacity, but they really don't have any specific plans about that yet, because remember, this is an airline that branded their entire airline around one particular plane, so what's going to happen now remains to be seen.
And what do you think is going to be happening on board the Concorde during the flight? Something special? I mean, a conga line down the center aisle, what?
Yep,
here
as
she
a matter
goes.
Of fact, the
By the way,
Concorde is taking off right now.
Yeah, Peter, let's just sit and watch this because it is a moment of aviation history. Peter, and as she goes and takes off from Kennedy, I have to say that there are some people living in communities not far from that airport who are probably sipping champagne this morning, not unhappy that this is the last flight of the Concorde.
That is correct, Matt. As it rolls down runway 31 left behind me, you just saw it take off. They'll make a mandatory left turn over those people in Howard Beach and then out over the water, and in about 12 minutes he'll kick on the afterburners and then they'll go up to Mach 2.
Yeah, and if you've ever been under the Concorde and watched it come off a runway, it roars, and the people there have been complaining for years that it's shaken their houses, even set off car alarms every time it takes to the skies. So there's going to be some peace and quiet, relative peace and quiet for those people in the days and months to come. Peter, let me just ask you also, I mean, what is going to happen with the actual aircraft? 16 were built. How many are left, and where are they going?
Well, British Airways only has 5 left. In fact, the plane that just took off now is their latest in the fleet. In fact, it actually set the speed record about 7 years ago from New York to London in 2 hours and 52 minutes. They're not going to set any speed records today because they're going to fly low and slow over London, over Windsor Castle, up the Thames, all around London. What's going to happen after that, all 5 planes are going to be parked in London at the airport, and then one by one they'll be decommissioned and go to museums around the world.
All right, Peter Greenberg, just pretty to watch. I don't care how many years she's been flying. It is pretty to watch that plane take off. And thanks for your coverage very much.
You got it, madam. Quite an emotional moment out here.
Yeah, it's
the
nice.
Concorde apparently travels faster than the sun, and when it goes supersonic, you've been on it. You really feel like you're on a spaceship in a way, don't you?
But you know, people always say, what does it feel like when it kicks into supersonic? You hear that little boom. It's kind of like a jolt, and then, you know, it doesn't feel any different after that, although you're flying a lot higher normally than a typical commercial airline up there.
And I felt like John Glenn.
Did you? You thought you were weightless there for a while, didn't you? Floating down the aisle.
Unfortunately, I never feel that way. Meanwhile, we have some funny stories. Harvey Weinstein, we're going to bust a couple of people. Chairman of Miramax was fined 200 pounds in June of 1999 for lighting a cigarette in the bathroom. He said he got nervous because of turbulence. Diana Ross set off a metal detector and flew into a rage when a guard tried to search her by hand. She was arrested, but later released without charges.
And I know this is your
favorite one. When Michael Jackson flew to Britain on Concorde last year, he reportedly purchased a separate seat for his Pinocchio-style puppet. Wasn't that nice of him?
It's a pricey puppet right there.